SnowTrax is brought to you by Polaris. Think outside. Ski-Doo. Winter lovers, get out there and experience that Ski-Doo feeling. And by Hercules Tire. Ride on our strength.
John Arkwright and I have been friends since I was just a young lad. He used to come to all the snowcross races, and when I was fresh out of college and starting to work for SnowTrax, the first thing that my dad told me was, "You're going on a trip to Northern Ontario with John." And as they say, the rest is history. But for this trip, visiting Sault Ste. Marie, Elliot Lake, and Spanish feels like a throwback to when both John and I were a lot younger. On this trip, we'll be sampling all the best that these areas have to offer and showing you some great loop options, such as the Soo Highlands Loop and the Northshore Loop. So how many years has it been since we've done one of these? It's been a while.
Honestly, I don't know.
I know, it's been a while. We're gonna do Sault Ste. Marie and then also Elliot Lake. Well, the whole Algoma area really is full of excellent snowmobiling.
Oh.
The Northshore Loop is what? It's about 400 or so?
450, I think, somewhere in around there.
So it's a good loop. You know, if you take anything away from this story, it's that you don't have to go that far. Elliot Lake is a great place to ride, and it can connect you right through to the Soo. And the cool thing is that you can do this trip as a multi-night, which is what we're showing. You can stop in Soo at the Fairfield Inn, which we're going to ride right out of, and you can go into Dunlop Lake Lodge or any of the other accommodations available. And it's a great little trip.
Yes.
I like riding during March. I don't know why. No, I do know why. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
Because it's flipping warmer.
Oh, yeah, I mean, days are longer.
Days are longer, the sun is high, you stop on the side of the trail, you unzip your jacket, the sun hits you, and you're like, you got that nice warm feeling.
It's gonna be fun.
I think we'll have a good time.
It's not gonna be minus 20 either. I'm not very good at this.
I'm not very good at this either, John. This is my first time doing it.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so.
No way.
Well, I'm not certain, but.
No, I did it once with you in Quebec. Just make your second time.
Okay, second time.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get it right. Okay.
We'll just ace it.
That's right.
Okay.
So it has been quite some time since you and I have been up to the Soo, Elliot Lake, Spanish. I mean, the last time I was on the Northshore Loop was probably on a side-by-side with you, and it would have been, what, 10 years ago at least?
At least 10 years ago.
At least 10 years ago. The Soo Highlands Loop and the Northshore Loop do intersect, but taking the extra day to do just the Soo Highlands Loop and experience things like riding right from the city out into the trails is a really unique thing to do, and I recommend that you don't rush through any of these great adventures. Make sure you take the time needed to explore, enjoy, and relax as you take in some of the best snowmobiling in all of North America.
You just can't get over the trail conditions.
Yep.
Let's talk about the trail conditions.
Yeah, I mean, in the Soo, we had it groomed right up to the Fairfield. They brought the groomer in the night before, but that wasn't just for us. They do that all the time. They groom right into the Fairfield, the Marriott, and you leave town and you're like, okay, well, they did that just to get into town. No, then you get outside of town and you go, hey, it's groomed here. Then you get further outside of town, you go, hey, it's groomed here. You get up to Hayden on your way to Searchmount, you go, hey, it's groomed here. And I mean, it was wide and nice and just smooth, but there's lots of features. And you know what? One thing I like about this area, you can go to certain places and certain other provinces where it may be real wide, but it doesn't get twisty. And I think we've had a lot of fun in the twisties. I know that you came off this a couple of times saying how much you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a hoot. Tabletop.
It's nice and smooth. And I would say the difference between Sault Ste. Marie and Elliot Lake to me is possibly just a little bit of altitude change. You know, the hills aren't quite as high in Elliot Lake as they are in the Soo. And when you get up near Searchmount, you really do get into the hills. If you're looking to plan a trip like John and I are on, you really need a minimum of 3 days, but you can extend it out past that with ease, and you'll find a lot of great trails to ride. I'd give the Soo Highlands Loop at least a full day to take in, and should you want to venture off a bit and spend more time exploring, you could spend a second day here without it getting repetitive, no problem. Day 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, would be a great way to see the Northshore Loop. It'll take 2 days for sure, and much like the Soo Highlands Loop, there's lots of room to stop in places like Elliot Lake and do a 4th day or 5th day and either take your time or explore what great trails Elliot Lake has to offer outside of just the Northshore Loop. We are based out of Elliot Lake today, stayed at Dunlop Lodge, got a good breakfast, woke up, and we're ready to rock. So we're gonna get everything unloaded, see what this portion of the trip has to offer.
Either that or we're going to ride 3 of us on your sled.
Oh,
you doubted me.
You could have brought a hairdryer. Battery-powered hairdryer.
You must want a Tesla. I bet you're one of them Tesla
Yeah, well, I
drivers,
can't hardly
right?
wait to buy one. I'd have to sell my house to buy it, but...
Elliot Lake, I was surprised. Elliot Lake has had quite a bit of snow as well.
You know, it's always a little sketchy close to the highway corridor.
Yep.
It's the same in every town.
Absolutely.
Trails get used the most there. And sure, there's a few rocks showing through. Yes, it is March. And then we've had -7 nights, not minus 25 nights.
Yeah.
And it's just makes your day of riding just...
And that's one thing I really appreciate is late season riding. Early season riding, you're scratching, you're wrecking stuff, you're wearing through equipment. You know, you're coming up to trails that are red and you're saying, okay, well, how do we get around this? This time of the year, you got great temperatures in the morning that are, you know, fresh and cool. In the afternoon, it starts to warm up. You got the base there that it doesn't matter. Yes, you're gonna find a couple of rocks and a couple of areas that are burned off where the southern slopes are exposed. Beyond that, this is some of the best riding going.
There is probably still 2 feet of base.
Yep.
In 90% of the trails we've ridden, it's going to stay consistently -5, -6 at night, maybe +2, +3.
Yep.
But wow, you can't. I'll take that weather.
Yes,
Over
absolutely.
-25 any day of the week.
Absolutely.
You know?
And a lot of folks don't realize you can run in Northern Ontario all the way most times up until the 3rd and 4th week of March, and
yes.
occasionally into the 1st week of April. And that's really cool because there's few places in Ontario you can do that. So if it's late season and you want to enjoy a ride, come up here, do this. And this Northshore Loop has been really, really enjoyable because you've got clubs that are very dedicated to keeping trails in top condition. These guys are grooming all the time because that's what they want to do. I mean, they're snowmobilers, they're passionate, and they want to make sure that they have the best trails to put forwards for whoever comes up here to ride them. And
they've bought into selling enthusiasm.
yes.
And they've bought into it the way that they work as hard as they can with limited amount of people. They're doing a great job here.
Yep.
And I knew about this Northshore Loop back in the late 90s.
For sure.
And it was all promoted then. I wrote about it, I don't know how many times. I carved a lot of miles on these trails back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And
it's just as good now as it was then.
yes.
And it's a bit of a hidden gem.
One of the things that I'm really noticing here is AJ, it's almost like we would see in the early 90s in Quebec, the heater shacks. Hey, this just isn't a man's game.
No, you're right.
And these heater shacks, the companies, corporate companies are sponsoring them.
Yep.
This one we're having lunch at today, like, that's.
Yep. Sault Ste. Marie, I believe, has 5 warm-up shacks. Elliot Lake now, I can't remember the number, but it's 3 or 5.
Yeah.
Here in Spanish, they have 3 alone just in Spanish. And the cool thing is that they're stocked with wood. They're there for you to use. It's not like, okay, this is only on family day or only on a club weekend ride. Warm up, treat it with respect, and move on. And I don't know too many other places in Ontario, definitely back home for me. This isn't something that they do.
No.
But I appreciate this. And what I'm starting to feel is that, I want to say that late 80s, early 90s kind of camaraderie, family. Hey, let's go out, let's hook on, you know, a sleigh, let's take a little firewood, let's bring a barbecue or a grill with us and start a fire and stand around with a bunch of people. The kids are playing and throwing snowballs at each other, and you may have only ridden 60 or 80K to get where you're going, but you're having a blast, and you're building relationships. It's not 400, 500 kilometers a day ride.
Absolutely. They see a good flow of Americans coming across to the Soo.
Yep.
But I think sometimes it's been a hard sell to get them to say, okay, when you get to North Bay, instead of hanging a right and going, and don't get me wrong, it's great riding as you go north of North Bay.
Sure.
But there's some incredible riding over here. Come and enjoy it.
Yes.
I'm guaranteeing one thing, You come once, you're going to come back a second and probably a third time.
At the end of the day, we've had a great time. The Northshore Loop is worth checking out. It's worth doing. And like you said, you do it once, you're probably coming back to do it again.
For sure.
Trail Tech is sponsored by Princess Auto. Ideas, tools.
You know, buying a sled nowadays for youth, maybe your spouse, or even having one kicking around for a buddy to use when they come up, that's harder and harder to do on a budget. So I'm going to show you today how you can buy a sled for a reasonable price, and then with just a little bit of an investment, fix it up and make it something that's a whole lot more than you thought possible. Utilizing companies like Kimpex means that I've got access to incredibly large arrays of parts and accessories. Not just new parts for new sleds, but new parts for old sleds specifically, because this is really where most folks start to get nervous, wondering if they could even find the basic service bits to keep an older sled going. And I'm here today to tell you that yes, you can. So this sled right here is a 2000 Ski-Doo Touring E380 Fan. It's got just over 2,500 kilometers and it's in pretty decent shape. Now, I bought this snowmobile for my daughters, but more specifically for my eldest, who's eligible this year to get her snowmobile license, and I wanted her to be able to ride a full-size sled without damaging a new full-size sled. So yeah, 2,500 kilometers isn't all that much, but there are lots of things that weather, age, and rust can take their toll on. Maybe like this sled, it's not so much any one thing that's wrecked, but just overall is in need of a little investment to keep it looking its best and continue to provide years more reliable service. Today's budget was right around $1,000, and you're going to be shocked how far that goes. It even includes a brand new set of Kimpex Rush skis and carbides. Sure, I could have opted to keep my old rusty stock steel skis and saved about half the budget, or I could have chosen a new set of steel skis from Kimpex just like the stocks for around $300. But this update will not only help improve steering and drivability, it'll also mean that the skis won't ever rust again, as all the parts of the skis are plastic, reducing unsprung weight and making driving for a lighter, smaller rider much easier. Kimpex offers multiple plastic ski styles and colors for just about every snowmobile ever made. Now, before heading under the hood of this sled, the windshield, which is still in pretty good condition, is hazy and has some old graphic marks left on it, so that's something that can really age a sled of this vintage. With options of blacked out, smoke, or this style of clear windshield, there's lots of choices. I opted for what I know will keep my kiddos the warmest because a cold kid is like a cold wife. Unhappy. The stock shield has used zip ties to hold it on because those rubber retainers can be hard to find, but for a simple $6, Kimpex will send you a 6-pack of them and make your install much easier. Now, under the hood, we do have quite a few parts and pieces to replace and update to keep this 2000 Ski-Doo running strong. First up is some new muffler springs. These things can go bad after pulling too hard, so for a few bucks, replacement is simple and easy, and I'll keep your pipe from flopping around. Spark plugs are also very important, not only to check and change, but to have a few spares kicking around. While the sled does run, I'd prefer to start with a fresh, higher performance set of NGK Iridium IX plugs, and then I'm going to take a set of these standard NGK plugs and put them in the belt cover holder as backup. From here, taking the belt currently on the sled off and using it as a spare is a good rule of thumb, and in place goes a brand new Kimpex Advantage drive belt. It's a reliable and price-conscious option and works great for a lower horsepower sled like this. Now, this would probably be enough for us to get out and have a lot of fun for a long time, but there's one thing that I like to not overlook, and that is the chain case chain. Now, you can assume that the oil inside of the chain case is absolutely ancient because there's a lot of people who don't even know that it's there. And when it comes to checking the tensioner, if you find that there's a little bit of slop, it's not a bad idea on an old sled just to put a new chain in. It's fairly cheap and it's going to save you the cover and possibly the entire case if the chain is to break and bind up. So for just over $100, I was able to order the exact replacement Kimpex Silent Drive chain. The removal and replacement takes a little bit of time and it's more work than the other things that we've done, but it's a worthy one to do. Remember to fill it back up with proper snowmobile chain case oil, which is 80-90 weight, and you'll be ready for years more worry-free service. While I'm here at the chain case, I'll also go ahead and switch out the brake pads for a brand new stock style Kimpex metallic pad set. They make them for just about every sled built in their OEM quality. I'll also be installing a brighter, more effective halogen Kimpex H4 headlight bulb. Now with the hood closed up, I feel like I've tackled the most important maintenance things to be done, but I still have a couple of things that I would like to update while I'm working on the sled. I can see that the stock snow flap got stuck into the studs at one point, so a fresh Kimpex flap is a $22 easy swap that makes it look so much better. Likewise, the gas cap on this sled isn't the right one. EPI makes a perfect fit replacement and gets us back to seeing precisely how much fuel we've got left. And while I'm here, I also wanted to do a little extra to keep my kids' hands warm. So I went with a set of the Kimpex Universal Standard muffs. They're made out of a nice neoprene material and just slip over the bars. These, along with the hand and thumb warmers, will keep them out there way longer. And actually, I secretly bring these along on cold days rides too. Also keep in mind, in our old engines like this 380 Rotex fan, you can totally use regular mineral oil in the engine to save a few bucks. 1 or 4 liter jugs of Kimpex oil can be bought in mineral or full synthetic and are great options for saving some money but getting in a quality product. You know, I was really impressed with just how far my budget of $1,000 actually went on this snowmobile today. And it feels great when you find a good deal on a sled like this, so putting in that little bit of extra investment means that not only are you and the person that you're building this sled up for going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, when you go to trade it up or sell it to the next buyer, they're going to see that added potential as well.
SnowTrax has been brought to you by Arctic Cat, share our passion. Outaouais Tourism, snow-covered landscapes to explore. And by FXR, brings you more.
In the snowmobile business, there is a reality, a strong reality that must be understood. And for the most part, it must be adhered to. What is that reality? The reality is that all Yamaha snowmobiles must be 4-strokes. Okay, in the past 3 years, there has been a move to 2-stroke power in the Yamaha product profile. That being said, the mighty 998 Turbo and the 1049cc Genesis 4-stroke triples still represent the central theme from the Yamaha's snowmobile division. It cannot be denied, since the arrival of the RX-1 in model year 2003, Yamaha has been on a mission to bring 4-stroke power into the mainstream of the snowmobile business. Interestingly, they have been exceptionally successful at accomplishing this mission. So here it is, a paradigm-shifting snowmobile from Yamaha. It is the Transporter 800 2-stroke. Let's unwrap the Transporter 800. This sled is built on Yamaha's wide-spaced A-arm chassis and uses a 165 horsepower class 800cc semi-direct injected 2-stroke twin for power. This is an impressive lightweight power plant which, when combined with a 153-inch 2.25 lug 15 wide shoe, can literally jump on top of deep snow. Unique to the Transporter versus Yamaha's other 2-stroke powered mountain sleds is a highly effective flip-up rear skid. So this flip-up rear skid is a very unique feature. This part of the rear suspension between that tire and this tire is actually movable and has a torsion spring keeping pressure on it to keep the back wheels down. When you want to back this snowmobile up, this works like the front of the track with an angle of attack, and it makes a huge difference. You can back up like crazy in deep snow, hard pack, doesn't matter, it works great. So we've exposed the use of a 2-stroke engine in a Yamaha. The question is this, was this the right thing to do with the Transporter? Decidedly, yes. This sled is a lightweight powerhouse, workaholic snowmobile with a strong dual-purpose identity. The lightweight power of a big-bore 2-stroke engine is unrivaled when navigating deep snow, towing a loaded sleigh, or dragging a fish hut onto your favorite lake. Here's a clue that the Transporter is really effective in deep snow. It has Yamaha's full-on mountain skis set at a 38-inch center distance. They're very effective. Stuff which speaks directly to the Transporter's dual-purpose personality are a large cargo rack with a sturdy fence for tying off cargo and a standard tow hitch. As well, there is an attractive and functional full-height windshield. While the seat is comfortable for one, it is not a full-on double saddle. That being said, it can accommodate two if necessary. Because the Transporter is relatively light, its standard E-start does not compromise the sled's flotation. The Transporter does not use a torsion bar, or more commonly known as a sway bar, or an anti-sway bar, up front. This gives a clue to its deep snow capability as well. It makes it much easier to side hill in deep snow without a sway bar. The Transporter comes with a highly desirable extra-large 12.3 US gallon fuel tank which provides for worry-free all-day runs through the backcountry. The Transporter uses Yamaha's dual piston caliper, drive axle brake for powerful braking on hard-packed snow. Here's a question for you. Do you think the Transporter is enough utility and enough recreation to satisfy the needs of a buyer who's looking for a snowmobile that will do more than just one thing? We think the answer is a very credible yes. The Transporter is not only powerful, it is fast and fun to ride all day. While its 2.25 Power Claw track may be a little tall on certain snow surfaces, standard scratchers can be unclipped and used effectively when it gets icy. In a snowmobile marketplace where ever-increasing MSRPs are shaping buyers' preferences, the new Transporter sets a standard for dual sport performance that, quite frankly, is impressive.